Hello everyone, I'm Kathleen Pelly. Welcome to the special omnibus edition of Journey with Story, where you can listen to all of this month's episodes in one single sitting. Oh, mums and dads, and all of you grown-ups, you might be interested in a little handout that I have available on my website that gives you lots of tips on raising kids who love to read. Of course, I know you're interested in that because you're already sharing this storytelling podcast with your little ones. So go to www.journeywithstory.com and click on the Resources tab at the top. And you can also find the link in our episode notes. Now, let's take an omnibus journey with story. Now, let's take a journey with why ducks sleep on one leg. Have you ever wondered why ducks stand on one leg and tuck the other up under their feathers when resting or sleeping? They also have the habit of sleeping with their heads turned around backwards, nestled into their feathers, keeping one eye open to watch for predators. According to legend, there were 3 ducks who were born with only one leg. They couldn't run as fast as hens and roosters, and they had a hard time finding food. They also couldn't chase after the beavers, who had 2 large webbed feet to help them swim fast, and a large tail to help them steer. The poor ducks limped all over the rice fields until one day they tried to figure out why the Jade Emperor had given them only one leg instead of 2 or 4 like the other animals on earth. They were not pleased. "What's the matter with the Emperor? Did he make us this way on purpose? Or did he just forget to give us the other leg?" asked the youngest duck. The second duck stood up high, looked around and said, "Yes, we're the only one-legged creatures on earth. We should have been created equal with the others. No one should be like us, stuck with only one leg. We struggle every single day." The oldest and wisest duck agreed. "By all means, we should meet the Jade Emperor and ask for fairness and equality. He should give us another leg." While the 3 one-legged ducks discussed their plans to see the Jade Emperor, the rooster passed by and tried to listen to every single word. The ducks wanted to know where to find the Jade Emperor so that they could bring a grievance. "First, we need to fly up there," the little duck, pointing his wing up in the air, said. "And I don't think any of us can fly that high." "Oh, no, I remember now," said the second duck. "Each year, the carps, those are just a type of fish, swim upstream and leap over the Golden Gate to be transformed into a dragon who protects the Jade Emperor in the Celestial Palace." "But, brother," the little duck said worriedly, "how can we swim upstream like the carps?" "Oh, calm down, buddies," said the oldest duck. "I suggest that we draft a letter first." "Oh, no, none of us have experience writing a letter. We would have to consult someone," the second duck argued. As the 3 hopeless friends struggled to solve their problem, Mr. Rooster came out from the haystack and said, Oh, don't worry, I'll help you draft a petition, and you don't need to fly up into the sky or swim upstream to meet the Jade Emperor. The ducks couldn't believe their luck. Mr. Rooster would be a great consultant. Within minutes, the rooster finished scribbling a letter of grievance. He passed it to the oldest duck and suggested that they meet the guardian of the village temple who would help them convey the letter to the Jade Emperor. Hurry up and go to the village temple. It's about a 3-hour walk from here, so better scoot, Mr. Rooster urged. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts. We will never forget your kindness and your help, the ducks quacked happily in unison. Adding to their excitement, the rooster offered to go with them. The ducks were impressed by the rooster's knowledge, wisdom, and generosity. The 4 friends went up the hill, down to the river, and across the rice paddies for hours and hours, and finally they reached the village temple. They all looked around and searched for the temple guardian. The oldest duck held the letter tight under his wings. It was so quiet and peaceful. Suddenly they all heard loud voices coming from the temple. Who replaced the incense burner on the altar? Ever heard of an incense burner with 6 golden legs? That's 3 legs too many. The temple guardian shouted angrily to his servant. I don't want to see these extra 3 legs. Please remove this burner right away. 3 extra legs? The little duck shouted happily, with no notion of what an incense burner was. Hurry up! Go ask the guardian for these 3 extra legs. With the rooster's help, the oldest duck presented the letter to the guardian, who laughed. Ha ha ha! I can understand why you want another leg. No one should have only 1. But these extra legs aren't duck legs. Are you sure you want them? He asked. Oh, yes, please. We will learn how to use them, even if they're not duck legs, the ducks replied. Fine. Each of you can have 1 leg. But remember that these golden legs are precious, the guardian said. With joy and excitement, the ducks thanked the guardian and quickly attached the golden legs to their bodies. Since that day, the ducks were overjoyed to have 2 legs like other animals. They could run as fast as the hens and the roosters, and they could swim along with the beavers. To be safe, they stuck their golden leg into their feathers so no one could steal it, and stood on 1 leg when resting or sleeping, and always kept an eye open, because you never know who might want to steal a golden incense burner leg. Now let's take a journey with the Story Stone. In the time of the forefathers, there lived a boy named Crow, who was an orphan. Nobody in his village wanted to look after him, so Crow had to live by himself in a rough shelter and hunt for his own food. Crow was constantly scorned and rejected by his people, so eventually he decided he would be happier alone. He took his bow and arrows and a little food that he had scavenged and set off through the forest without a friend in the world. Crow walked until he came to a river, where he found a canoe abandoned on the bank. He pushed it into the water and climbed inside. But before Crow could dip a paddle in the water, the canoe rose into the air and carried him off through the clouds. Crow stared in wonder as he journeyed high above the ground. At last the canoe descended from the clouds and settled onto a river where he was able to paddle to shore. Crow left the canoe and found a clearing nearby where he set to work, stripping bark from the trees to build himself a small cabin. When the work was done, he looked around for somewhere to eat his food. A large round stone with a flat top stood at the center of the clearing, so Crow climbed up and sat on top. Just as he was about to eat, a voice spoke. "Have you come to hear a story?" it asked. Crow stared around the clearing in alarm, but there was nobody else there. He realized it was the stone which had spoken. What is a story?" he asked nervously. "It is a treasure," said the stone, "an account of things that happened long ago. I can tell you stories about people and happenings from a world that existed before this one." "Oh, I would like that," said Crow. "Then first, you must give me something in return," said the stone. Crow had nothing but a few scraps of food, so he placed a little piece of meat on the stone and it began to tell a story. The wonderful story filled Crow's head with magical people, powerful creatures, and brave deeds. When it was finished, he was eager for more. "I will tell you another story tomorrow," said the stone. "But next time, when I am ready to begin, you must say, 'Nio.' And when I speak, you must say, 'Hen.' Then, when the story is done, I shall say, 'Da ne ho nigagi is,' to show it is finished, and you must give me a gift in thanks." That night in his tree bark cabin, Crow revisited the wonderful story in his dreams. Next day, Crow went out hunting and caught some birds. In the evening, he used the words that the stone had taught him, and when the second story was finished, he gave the birds as a gift, and the stone was pleased. As the days passed, Crow became a skilled hunter, and every evening he listened to the story stone until his head was almost bursting with the magical tales he had heard. "There are so many stories," he said to the stone. "How shall I remember them all?" "To do this, you must travel east," said the stone. "Walk until you reach a big village, and all will be made clear to you." Crow did as the stone instructed, but he was nervous about entering another village, remembering how he had been badly treated before. However, now he was a skilled hunter with many stories to tell, and when the people of that village discovered this, they befriended him and gave him clothes, food, and many gifts. One day, an old widow invited him to meet her daughter. The young woman gave Crow a beautiful pouch decorated with fine quills. "I made this for you, storyteller," she said. Crow liked the girl, and so he accepted the gift. The girl was pleased. Then she stepped forward with a loaf of bridal bread, offering herself to him as a wife. Crow accepted that too, and so he became her husband in the way of her people. A few days later, Crow took his wife back to the place of the stone. "This is where I learnt my stories," he told her. "I know," said his wife. "The stone is my grandfather. He told me to make the pouch for you. If you put a small memento into the pouch to remind you of each story that he's taught you, then that story will never be forgotten." And so Crow and his wife lived in the forest clearing, and every evening after the stone taught Crow a new story, he put something to remind him of it into the pouch. At last the day came when the stone told Crow he had no more stories to share. "I have given you this treasure. Now you must keep it safe," said the stone. "Teach these old stories to your children and grandchildren so that they will never be forgotten." Crow promised that he would keep the stories alive. Then Crow's wife asked to see the village where he was born. "They scorned and rejected me there," said Crow reluctantly. But she insisted, and so they went down to the river. To Crow's surprise, the flying canoe was still drawn up on the beach. "Don't be surprised," said his wife. "My grandfather asked me to send you this canoe long ago." As they flew through the sky, Crow's wife taught him many songs to share with his stories. When they arrived at the village of Crow's people, nobody recognized him at first. He reminded them that he was the orphan boy who nobody wanted. "Now I have returned to bring you a treasure," he told the villagers. "Come to me at sunset, and I shall share it with you." The curious villagers gathered around Crow at sunset, and he showed them the embroidered quill pouch that his wife had made. Then he took out a memento and began to tell them a story filled with magical people, powerful creatures, and brave deeds. When it was finished, everyone was eager for more. And so Crow and his wife stayed in the village. And in time he was rewarded for his great storytelling skill with many gifts. Thanks to the story stone, the people and happenings of the world that existed before this one are remembered, and so they will be kept alive as a treasure for generations yet to come. Now, let's take a journey with why mosquitoes buzz around our ears. A long time ago, in a fish pond not far from the rice fields, there lived a giant crab named Maga. Maga was no ordinary crab. He was king of crabs, and everyone was afraid of him. Not only was he always in a crabby mood, he was almost twice as big as his crab cousins. When Maga was mad, his big claws would go snap, snap. And everyone, the fish, fireflies, worms, frogs, mosquitoes, snails, birds, would run away. One night, Maga couldn't fall asleep, which wasn't at all unusual. As everybody in the pond kingdom knew, Maga always had trouble sleeping. They also knew that if anyone dared wake him from his sleep, Maga would get very angry. That night he crept in and out of his house restlessly, trying to make himself tired enough to sleep. His house was a hole in the mud that led into a deep, dark tunnel underground. Finally, he gave up and decided to call for his old sheriff, who lived in a crab hole nearby. "Kagang!" he yelled into the quiet darkness. "Kagang!" A while later, Kagang arrived at Maga's side. Though Kagang was the sheriff, he was an old and brittle crab, and he could barely outrun a worm. "Yes, sir," he said, his grey feelers twitching. "What can I do for you, sir?" "Gather up all the frogs you can find and bring them here," Maga said. "I can't sleep, and I want them to sing to me." Several minutes later, Maga was back in his house, listening to the frogs sing. Sit back, now go to sleep," the frogs chorused. Maga soon fell into a deep sleep. He snored loudly. Kagang began to feel a bit sleepy himself, so he too crawled into his own hole to go to sleep for the night. Sit back, now go to sleep," the frogs went on singing. Then suddenly fat raindrops began to fall from the sky. "Aha!" one of the frogs said, laughing. "The king's snoring is so loud it's beginning to rain." Then all the other frogs began to laugh too. "Ha ha ha!" they said, holding their bellies. The frogs were having so much fun they didn't even notice Maga come out of his hole. He was wide awake and mad. "Oh no, let's go," said the terrified frogs. In a panic, the frogs began hopping in all directions, trying to find places to hide. They leaped behind slippery rocks into tall grass and under water lilies in the murky pond. Early the next morning, when the sun was just beginning to shine, Maga ordered Kagang to rally all the frogs for a special meeting. "Why were you making so much noise last night?" he demanded, inching closer to the frogs and snapping his claws loudly. The frogs clung together, shaking. They knew very well that Maga was strong enough to slice any one of them in half with a single stroke of his powerful pincers. "I am the king," he boomed, raising his claws high above his head. "You must never disturb me while I'm sleeping." The frogs looked at each other worriedly. Then finally the bravest frog stepped forward. "Sir," he said as politely as he could, "we saw our friend the snail carrying his house on his shoulders, and so we started to laugh." Maga looked at him sharply, and the frog lowered his gaze ever so slightly. Even the bravest frog knew better than to challenge Maga. Maga nodded thoughtfully. "I see," he said. "The snail made you all laugh." "Yes, sir," said the frog. "Well then," Maga said, his tone softening a bit, "I will pardon you this time, but the next time, snap, snap, you're all going to get it." And with that, Maga dismissed the frogs and turned to the old sheriff. "I want you to find that snail and arrest him." A couple of hours later, the old sheriff returned with the snail, who started shaking when he saw Maga's giant pincers. Snap, snap, Maga's claws went. "Yo," he said, pointing a claw in the snail's direction. "Why were you wandering around last night with your house on your back?" Sir," stammered the snail. The firefly was playing too close to my house, and I was afraid it would catch fire. Maga remained silent for a moment. "Ah, I see," he said. "It was the firefly that made you wander on my property with your house on your back." He looked at Kagang, who was standing guard next to the snail. "Do you believe his story?" he asked. The old sheriff nodded. "I think he's telling the truth, sir." "Then let this snail go and arrest that firefly," Maga ordered, his claws twitching with anger. "Find that firefly now." Kagang returned at noon, the firefly nervously fluttering beside him. "Whatever it is," she said tremulously, "I swear I won't do it." "Be quiet," Maga said, fuming. The heat from the sun was now beating down on his back, and he was growing madder and madder by the minute. "Firefly, explain why." "Snap, snap, snap. You were carrying fire near the snail's house last night." The firefly's wings suddenly went still, and her face dimmed. She was so scared she couldn't move. She began. "Well, speak, firefly," Maga said impatiently. "I haven't got all day." The firefly tried again. "I had to turn on my fire to keep the mosquito away," she explained. "He was trying to bite me." The firefly's story seemed perfectly believable to Maga, but before he could give Kagang the order to arrest the mosquito, the old sheriff spoke up. "You want me to find the mosquito and arrest him, sir?" he said, sounding tired. "Bring him to me now!" he raised rapidly, snapping his pincers. Snap, snap, snap. Kagang dutifully took off in search of the mosquito as the firefly fluttered away. Late in the afternoon, he returned with a humming mosquito. "Well, hello, King," the mosquito said. "Why have you invited me here?" Then he casually buzzed over to where Maga was sitting. Maga didn't like the mosquito's tone one bit. He didn't even seem afraid. Snap, 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 went his claws threateningly. Snap, snap! "Why were you trying to bite the firefly?" The mosquito laughed, buzzing even closer to Maga. "I'm a mosquito, aren't I?" he said cockily. "It's what I do." "You will be punished," Maga roared, his eyes bulging. Then the mosquito flew swiftly up into the air and poked Maga right in the eye. He knew that the eyes were the only soft parts of the crab. "Ah!" Maga cried, turning bright red. "Kagang!" he screamed. "Kill that little bug!" By this time, Kagang was truly exhausted. But he mustered up all his strength and raised his pincers. Snip went one of his claws weakly. Snip, snip. The mosquito laughed and laughed, even daring to fly in between Kagang's claws just for the fun of it. In and out he recklessly flew until suddenly Kagang caught him with one deadly snip. The mosquito stopped laughing and fell to the ground lifeless. Then, out of nowhere came a battalion of mosquitoes with a humming roar. Buzz, buzz. Hundreds of the dead mosquitoes' friends surrounded Maga and the poor old sheriff, poking them in the eyes with their sharp stingers. Snip, snap, snap. The crabs fought back, but Maga's powerful claws were useless to him. The mosquitoes were just too fast and too small. Finally, Maga and Kagang gave up and scampered into their holes, with the mosquito battalion trailing close behind. The mosquitoes could no longer get to Maga and Kagan, who were safely burrowed in their houses deep underground. But today, 1,000 years later, the mosquitoes are still waiting for them to come out. So whenever they see the holes of our ears, they are reminded of Maga's and Kagang's crab holes. And that is why mosquitoes buzz around our ears. Now, let's take a journey with the fox, the hare, and the toad have an argument. One day, a fox, a hare, and a toad were resting themselves under a tree in the forest. In the course of their conversation, they fell to disputing among themselves as to who could trace the longest line of descent. The fox said, "Bow low and listen to what I say. My ancestors lived during the great Han dynasty, as you can see by referring to the classics. Which of you can boast of such a long line of descent, I should like to know? You must therefore acknowledge that my family is superior to any of yours." The hare sat on his haunches and stroked his whiskers. Scarcely had the fox finished when he burst into a loud laugh, "Ha, ha, ha!" and said, "You are quite an upstart, and like all of that class, you make yourself ridiculous. Long before the Han dynasty was ever dreamed of, there was a moon, you must acknowledge. If you look at the moon on any clear night, you will see a cinnamon tree, beneath which is a hare pounding medicines in a mortar. This is my distinguished forebear. It seems to me you must admit that my family line is the longest and the most respectable." The fox was silent, but the toad laughed until the tears ran down his cheeks. And it was some time before he could sober himself sufficiently to tell his story. "Long before ever the moon existed, and when the heavens were first formed out of chaos, there lived 3 brother toads. One of them met his death by being crushed beneath one of the pillars of heaven. Another died when Pandora melted the 5 stones with which she repaired a rip in the heavens. And the third was killed when the first Emperor of Chu built his great palace. How can I avoid laughing when I hear such upstarts as you two make claims to a long line and respectability?" Now, while the toad was boasting of his noble ancestors, a tiger had slyly joined the group, and when the toad had finished speaking, the tiger quietly stretched out his paw and brushed the toad to one side with a sniff of contempt. "Oh, Mr. Tiger," said the toad, "we are not discussing feats of strength, my most noble sir. We are talking about respectability." "Well now," replied the tiger, "since you have such a contempt for strength, perhaps you can tell me what would happen to you if I were to place a single one of my paws on you and keep it there for a few days." The toad thought deeply for a moment, and then he answered, "I could easily live by swallowing my own saliva, for toads rarely partake of anything else. But my noble sir, may I ask, what would become of you while you were holding me under your paw? For tigers, unlike toads, must have more material nourishment than saliva. I greatly fear that you would starve to death." The tiger could not reply to this argument, and he turned and walked away. The fox, the hare, and the toad waited until the tiger was well out of sight. Then they laughed till their sides shook at the clever answer of the toad. When they calmed down, they all agreed that the best thing for them to do was to disappear into the forest themselves before the tiger had time to think the whole thing over and decide to come back and enjoy a good supper. Let's take a journey with two Halloween poems, Someone by Walter de la Mare and The Witch of Willoughby Woods by Rowena Bennett. Someone. Someone came a-knocking at my wee small door. Someone came a-knocking. I'm sure. I listened. I opened. I looked to left and right. But not there was a stirring in the still, dark night. Only the busy beetle tap-tapping in the wall. Only from the forest the screech owl's call. Only the cricket whistling while the dewdrops fall. So I know not who came knocking at all. The Witch of Willoughby Wood. There once was a witch of Willoughby Wood, and a weird, wild witch was she, with hair that was snarled, and hands that were gnarled, and a kickety-rickety knee. She could jump, they say, to the moon and back, but this I never did see. Now Willoughby Wood was near Sassafras Swamp, where there's never a road or a rut. And there by the singing witch hazel bush, the old woman builded her hut. She builded with neither a hammer or shovel. She kneaded, she rolled out, she baked her brown hovel. For all witches' houses, I've oft heard it said, are made of stick candy and fresh gingerbread. But the shingles that shingle this old witch's roof were lollipop shingles and hurricane-proof, too hard to be pelted and melted by rain. Why this is important, I soon will explain. One day there came running to Sassafras Swamp a dark little shadowy mouse. He was noted for being a scoundrel and scamp, and he gnawed at the old woman's house, where the doorpost was weak and the doorpost was worn. And when the witch scolded, he laughed to her scorn. And when the witch chased him, he felt quite delighted. She never could catch him, for she was nearsighted. And so, though she quibbled, he gnawed and he nibbled. The witch said, I won't have my house take a tumble. I'll search in my magical book for a spell I can weave and a charm I can mumble to get you away from this nook. It will be a good warning to other bad mice who won't earn their bread but go stealing a slice. Your charms cannot hurt, said the mouse, looking pert. Well, she looked in her book, and she waved her right arm, and she said the most magical things, till the mouse felt strange, looked about in alarm, and he found he was growing some wings. He flapped and he fluttered the longer she muttered. And now, my fine fellow, you'd best be aloof, said the witch as he floundered around. You can't stay on earth and you can't gnaw my roof. It's lollipop hard and it's hurricane-proof, so you'd better take off from the ground if you are wise. Stay in the skies. Oh, I wonder, what do you think has happened to this little mouse? What do you think the witch has turned him into? Let's find out. Then in went the woman of Willoughby Wood, into her hearthstone and cat. There she put her old volume up high on the shelf, and framed her hot face with her hat. Then she said, That is that. I have just made a bet. I hope you enjoyed this special omnibus edition of Journey with Story. And don't forget, if you had a favourite story, do let us know. Just go to www.journeywithstory.com, click on the Contact Us, and fill in the form. And if you want to be considered for a shout-out on the show, send us your drawings there too. Click on Contact Us, fill in the form, and attach your drawing there. You can also see the link in our episode notes. Cheerio then. Join me next time for Journey with Story. Music and post-production was by Colette Jonas.